Americans, they're looking back on the horror and on the legacy of 9/11. So there's going to be a lot of folks gathering at memorials today, firehouses, city halls, and everywhere to observe the 22nd anniversary of the most deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil. Is that so commemorations stretch from the attack sites at New York's World Trade Center, the Pentagon, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to Alaska and beyond. So Joe Biden, I think, is the first president to ever do some sort of ceremony at the military base in Alaska. He's going to be there. The plane was hijacked and claimed nearly 3,000 lives. The hijacked plane attacks claimed 3,000 lives. So we're with the families of those who lost people that day. Uh, just be thinking about I wasn't alive. I mean, I was born in 1999. I'm going to encourage you to call in today to tell me about uh, where you were on 9/11. That seems to be something that people very distinctly remember about 9/11, where they were, what they were doing when they heard the news of these hijacked planes going into the towers. Um, and one thing that people always tell me about 9/11. Now, I wasn't there. I mean, I was just a baby. And they always say that we were one country. You know, the year, 2 years after that, we were one country, one nation, one people, and we understood our identity as Americans, just like it should be. And that was the feeling everybody got, that we were all one nation, one people, and everybody came together and they knew that you had to come together and help other people. At the end of the day, it's all about serving God and serving others. Love God, love people. And people understood that was their identity as Americans back then. So go ahead, give me a call today if you want. 309-451-9299. I'm going to get through a couple of stories, so I'll take your calls here in about 10 minutes. I'll do that in the second segment of the morning buzz. So stick around for that. 309-451-9299. I'll let you guys know when to call in after this first segment. Okay. So stay with me. 11-year-old King, he shoots this home intruder. And I've got to tell you about this news today. He actually mocks the intruder for crying after he shot him. So he's 11 years old. There was this home intruder. He shot him, rightfully so. And he actually was on the news mocking this intruder and saying he was crying like a little girl. This 11-year-old is straight thugging. I love this kid. Chicago Teachers Union president. She was busted for sending her son to a private school. Oh, that's kind of hypocritical. She makes all kinds of hypocritical excuses after the backlash. So people found out that she's sending her kid to a private school, and they're like, "Wait a second, what?" So she makes all kinds of excuses. And of course, we have to get to Joe Biden. This is the top story today. This is a derptastic. I like to call him Derpy Joe Biden. Derp, derp, derp. He has this appearance on the world stage, and he's yucking it up with the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. Salman, I think is his name. Salman. I don't know. He's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. I know everything that he's done. Uh, Joe Biden forgot his name, which was kind of funny. And he was yucking it up with this guy. And I'll tell you why that's a problem here coming up in just a little bit. Here at Cities 92.9, we love ourselves a quality good guy with a gun story. Okay. I actively look for these because way too many people say kids die from guns. It's like the number one killer. No, 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 no. Those statistics are wildly uh, swayed and misconstrued all of the time. They're distorted by the left. Kids are not the number one killer of kids is not guns. When you take away, when they say the number one killer of kids is guns, when you take that all away, it actually winds up being like drowning incidents, accidents, cancer is another one. When you take away the statistics of 15 to 19-year-olds, because traditionally, kids, right? are 12 years old, right? When you order at a kids on off a kids menu at a restaurant, their limit is 12 years old. If you're 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, they don't count you as a kid. So if you take away gang violence amidst 15, 16, 17, 18, 19-year olds, black young males, if you take away all of their deaths from gun violence, then it's not even close. It's definitely drowning or accidents. There's a big problem with gang violence in this like 15 to 19 age range. And if you take those statistics away, it's not guns killing kids. I'm sorry. But we here at Cities 92.9 and I myself, Kat Peterson, the Morning Buzz, I love a good guy with a gun story. I look for these. His name is Chris Gaither, and he's 11 years old. And he's the goodest guy with a gun I've ever seen or heard of. So this no good home invader, he tries to break into Chris's house, this 11-year-old kid's house, and he warned the intruder that he was going to kill him with the gun if the guy didn't leave. The intruder, of course, didn't listen because he's a criminal. So Chris is a kid of his word. He opened fire and actually made the guy cry like a little girl. What sells this? What's awesome about this story is how this ice cold little man shares his story with the reporters. I'm going to play his reaction. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
Told him I was gonna kill him all that with a gun if he didn't get out of my house.
11-year-old Chris Gaither was home alone Wednesday morning when he heard a noise. Someone had broken into his house. Scared, Chris grabbed a 9mm handgun.
When he was coming downstairs and told me he was gonna kill me and F you all that.
The intruder made it out the front door with a hamper in hand. That's when Chris started firing off bullets. As the intruder was to jump this fence, Chris's 12th and final shot hit the bad guy in the leg.
I shot through a hamper that he was carrying, and it was a full metal jacket bullet. I went straight to the bag and hit him in his leg. And he started crying like a little baby.
A baby that learned his lesson.
When I pulled the gun out on him, I guess he didn't think it was a real gun because he didn't worry about it. He just kept on walking.
The police have not released the name of the suspect, but Chris's mother says this man has robbed their house before. They don't know him personally. Chris credits his stepdad for his shooting skills.
Yeah, I play zombies for target practice.
Turns out there's more than a basset hound on guard.
I hope you learn your lesson from coming to his house trying to steal stuff.
Intel.
I just love this kid. He's 11 years old, folks. 11 years old. Ice cold little man. He goes, when I pulled the gun out on him, I guess he didn't think it was a real gun because he didn't worry about it and he just kept walking. So he shot him in the back of the leg. He started crying like a little baby. Dude, I love Chris. Chris just opened fired until this guy went down. So I'm telling you, he's he is awesome. He's a king. Now I think he might have to work on his aim because he didn't really hit it. He wasted a lot of ammo. He finally hit him in the leg, but that'll come in time. He's only 11. Once everyone sees him on the news, I'm sure Chris is going to be busy fighting off the 13-year-olds asking him for a soda before their parents get home. Live your life, King. Live your life. The only thing preventing this from being 10 out of 10 content is that there's no video of the intruder crying. I would have loved to seen that. When the thug in question shows himself to be a wimp, it makes all the difference in the world. So this story of the 11-year-old shooting the guy in the leg, making him cry like a little girl, I give it a solid 9.8. It's not 10 out of 10, but it's a 9.8. We are going to get to Chicago Teachers Union because the Chicago Teachers Union president has been making herself look like a fool. Hypocrisy. Another anti-school choice Democrat was caught once again sending her kid to public school or to a private school after actively campaigning against it. Okay, so she's campaigned against school choice, and she actually takes advantage of school choice and sends her kid to a private school. So the president of the teachers union, she's out there, and she said this not that long ago. I think it was about, I don't know, a year ago, when she got on the news and started talking about how she sends her kids to Chicago public schools and how she thinks that the Chicago public schools is so great. I'm going to share this. It's a quick clip with you of the Chicago Teachers Union president. Her name is, oh gosh, what is it? It's Davis Gates, Stacy Davis Gates. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
Schools. These are things that help to legitimize my space within the coalition.
That was Chicago Teachers Union President Stacy Davis Gates 18 months ago.
I'm also a mother. My children go to the Chicago public schools. These are things that help to legitimize my space within the coalition.
So she talks about how her kids go to the public school and that legitimizes her position. Now she sends her kids to private school. In her defense, the Chicago Teachers Union president, Stacy Davis Gates, criticized school choice, blaming the lack of resources. So the reason why she doesn't send her kid to Chicago public schools anymore is because there's a lack of resources. Yeah, because the teachers don't teach and they suck. So Davis Gates, she's a flaming hypocrite. And she was very loud about her opposition to both private schools and school choice because of, quote, racism. So here I've got one of her posts on X, formerly known as Twitter. School choice was actually the choice of racists. It was created to avoid integrating schools with Black children. Now it's the civil rights struggle of our generation. That's what she said on Twitter like a year or so ago. In 2018, she called private schools, quote, segregation academies. So 2018, you fast forward to 2023, she is now sending her kid to private school. I thought they were segregation academies, lady. So Davis Gates also opposed this, and I've talked about it before on the program, the Illinois Invest in Kids program, which offers a 75% income tax credit and provides scholarships to low-income students to attend non-public schools in Illinois. It's a great program. There's a lot of kids on it. Quote, it was a very difficult decision for us because there's a lot to offer Black youth who were entering high school. In many of our schools on the South Side and West Side, the course offerings are very marginal and limited. Then the other thing, and it was a very strong priority, was his ability to participate in co-curricular and extracurricular activities, which quite frankly don't exist at many of the schools, high schools in particular. So Chicago public schools don't have extracurricular activities. They don't have the course offerings that she wanted for her child. So that was what led her to put him into private school. In other words, she wants to make her son or make sure her son is offered endless possibilities, while your kids are subject to the abysmal opportunities. Okay, in Chicago public school system, it's huge. Nothing to see here, just another do as I say, not as I do Democrat. Chicago public schools are a mess and possibly the worst in the country. District-wide, there are many schools where no students in some grades can even read or perform math at grade level or read at grade level. There's so many schools. According to the Illinois Policy Institute last year, there were 50 Chicago public schools, which no fourth grade students scored at grade level in either reading or math. 50. And 50 schools in which no fifth grade students scored at grade level in math or reading. Over half of the Chicago schools are underutilized, actually, and among the least utilized, the 5 most empty are at less than 11% capacity, and at most 8% of their students are proficient in reading, 4% in math. So this is they're not even filled. So we're dishing we're giving all away this money to the Chicago Teachers Union, but their schools aren't even filled. The thing, they're all vacant because the parents have pulled them out. Even though we see empty schools and failed results in Chicago, don't even think about consolidating those facilities and running things more efficiently, because that could be a hate crime. Okay, that's where they're at with it. Because of racism, we can't consolidate those facilities, even though nobody's at those facilities. Davis Gates, that's her name. She said that there's a lack of resources, and that there is a reason behind her decision to send her son to the private school. But that is not true. In fact, Chicago has some of the highest costs of education, with an average of $29,000 per student. This is wild. I mean, get your green crayon out and write this down and do some math here. $29,000 per student. But we see some of the worst results. I just told you none of them can read. The schools are empty, but we're giving $29,000 per student. The fear of losing her union check is partly why she and other Democrats oppose school choice. Okay, so between January 1st of 2021 and September 30th of 2022, between that area, the National Education Association Fund for Children and Political Education, and PAC, so this is a PAC for the teachers union, with America's largest teachers union, spent more than $3.5 million, with a majority of their contributions going to Democrats. Okay, so there's so many contributions to politicians from this National Education Association Fund for Children and Political Education. Uh, and the PAC is affiliated with the largest teachers union, and they spend so much money on the Democrats. Democrats hate school choice because they fear breaking up the education monopoly they've built, and the lack of uncertainty about controlling what ideological garbage that they feed your kids, the LGBT stuff, the CRT stuff, uh, it that keeps them up at night. They hate school choice because they fear breaking up that education monopoly they've built up, and they want to be able to have the control over your kid, and they it keeps them up at night because they would dismantle what they're trying to do here. This atrocious state of our country's education system can be seen through the Chicago public schools, and Davis Gates is certainly aware of that. Okay, so she knows that there is it is just abysmal, our country's education system, and she knows that the Chicago public schools are probably the worst in the country when it comes to it. All right, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with uh, one of our frequent flyers, William J. Kelly. He's a Chicago reporter, and he's going to fill me in on the weekend violence in Chicago. He's also going to fill me in when it comes to these O'Hare. He was on Fox News talking about the O'Hare immigrants. So they are staying there. There's like this black curtain that's up, and then these immigrants are staying behind this black curtain. So I find that interesting. It's almost like they're trying to hide the amount of immigrants that have taken up residency at the O'Hare airport. And there's a lot of them staying there. I don't know what the latest numbers are. The last time I saw the numbers, I think it was like near 14,000 immigrants have been shipped up to Chicago alone since Governor Greg Abbott out of Texas said that he was going to do that. So stick around. We're going to be talking with William J. Kelly next. Americans are looking back at the horror and the legacy of 9/11 today. So today marks the 22nd anniversary of the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil. Now, Joe Biden, he's due at a ceremony on a military base in Alaska. Now, he's going to be the first president to do that in Alaska. So, people are going to be gathering at the attack sites, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, Shanksville, Pennsylvania. We're going to be seeing a lot of people remembering and observing the 22nd anniversary of this terror attack. Now, I wasn't alive. I mean, I was, but I was just a baby. So I did not. I don't remember it. You do. You remember exactly what you were doing, and shortly I'm going to be asking you guys to call in and tell me a little bit about where you were at that day. Where were you when you heard the news? Do you remember what you were doing? The hijacked plane attacks claimed the lives of 3,000 people. And one thing that people tell me now, I wasn't around, I don't remember it clearly, but people tell me that it was more so what happened afterwards. We were one country, one nation, one people, and that's the way it should be. And that was the feeling of everybody coming together and trying to figure out what they could do and how they could help. Joining me, I do want to ask you, William J. Kelly. He's a veteran Chicago reporter, frequent flyer here at Cities 92.9. He's feared and despised by Mayor Lori Lightfoot. She actually ripped his press credentials away. I don't know how many years ago, but he's an Emmy Award-winning producer, and he joins me now. First, let's get to it. Where were you that day? Do you remember what you were doing, William J. Kelly? I wasn't around. I'm full disclosure, 24 years old. I was a wee little baby. So I like to listen to where people were. Now, you're a young man yourself, so I don't know where exactly you were and if you remember it much yourself.
I was at home. My mom said, apparently our country's under attack, and she wasn't sure if our city would be next. So we sat on the sofa and watched the news coverage. I knew that I wanted to be a reporter even then, and I knew I wanted to try and get to the truth of stories, and I think I've tried to do that every day ever since.
Yeah. Well, and that's the one thing here. I think that there's a lot of truth to still come out about the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And Vivek Ramaswamy, I think, was even asked, he's the Republican presidential candidate, if he thought that that was an inside job. And I can't exactly how he answered, but the way he answered, it almost suggested as if, he wants to get to the bottom of what exactly happened prior to 9/11. Now, I think that there's, I forget exactly, there's a gentleman who, Rumsford or something like that, and he came out on 9/10 and said something. And people have a lot of questions about that from Bill Clinton, from Hillary Clinton, from the Bushes and things like that. And I think that there are still a lot of answers to be answered about 9/11. But yeah, I just wanted to ask you, so how old were you when the terror attacks happened?
Wow,
a kid.
I'm gonna have to pass on that.
Okay, pass on it.
I was at home, so I know. I remember that much.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's shift gears. Let's talk a little bit about the immigration. So you were actually on Fox and Friends, I believe,
Yes.
discussing the O'Hare Airport and how they are taking up residency. How many? I mean, do you know how many?
When I was on with Steve Ducey last week, the number was that the city was giving was 400. Now the number's 2,000. So that's the problem, Kat, is that the number of migrants, the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that are being spent on the migrants, these numbers change from day to day. As a reporter, like what we were just discussing, my goal has always been to try to get to the truth, and it has resulted in politicians like Mayor Lori Lightfoot and now Mayor Johnson fearing and or despising me, depending on how you want to look at it. And and trying to prevent me from even attending their press conferences. It really is a struggle to even get the truth in the city of Chicago right now. So yeah, we haven't recovered from the lockdowns and the looting of Lightfoot, and now we have the violent crime and the migrant crisis of Johnson.
Mm. Yeah. Well, and I mean, did you go to the O'Hare airport and did you talk with migrants?
Yeah,
Did you try to find
absolutely.
out how they got there and if they're planning on leaving?
Well, here's the weird part. The time before that I was reporting from O'Hare, it was on the crisis of homeless people, homeless Americans sleeping at the airport. That was, I think, back in February. Well, little did I know that I'd be reporting on the city of Chicago kicking homeless Americans out of the airport to make way for migrants. Kat, there's a lot more to this story. Okay, maybe I don't know. 50 years from now, there'll be some presidential candidate will be talking about getting to the bottom of what was really happening in 2023 with the migrant crisis. I don't think we really have gotten any of the honest answers about what's honestly happening in our big cities. We have Mayor Johnson saying that he's going to need $300 million through the end of the year. How much is he going to need next year? Okay. His big solution that he's going to unveil this week is to build tents. He wants to build winterized tent cities for the migrants. Kat, I don't know if anybody has ever read a history book, but every story that begins with tent cities ends very badly.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we're also going to be talking here about DePaul University. So the students have been warned to be on the lookout. So I hate to say it, I mean, but it's so true. And William, I don't know, maybe we can kind of work together on this one story. I don't know if you've heard that one story where, oh gosh, what's his name? Calixto is his name. He's that immigrant and he stabbed that Springfield girl.
Yes, I have heard that story. Yes.
So that's just gone. And he was on the run and they suspected that he went back down to Mexico. Now he's been in the country on an expired DACA status. So he was given status, at least legal status as a DACA recipient.
Mm-hmm.
But that expired, I think, in 2019. And he was in and out of prison. He had some issues before with a different girlfriend where he kidnapped her. And he served in a prison here in the state of Illinois. He didn't serve his entire 6 years. And he pled it even further down from kidnapping to some sort of forceful, I don't know the exact term, but forceful, I don't know. It was weird. It was just, and then he doesn't serve the entire time. So he only serves 2 years of a 6-year sentence, and then he's out, and he doesn't get deported. So how is he still here in 2023? That all happened in 2018 when he kidnapped this other girl.
Right.
And there were several people who said he had mental health issues and that he was crazy. So this guy still, and he's got a picture with himself and Dick Durbin at some sort of campaign thing. And it's just wild to me when people say, well, these illegal immigrants, they're children or they're families and they're just seeking a better life. No, these are hardened criminals who are nuts and who will stab women and run. That's the illegal immigrant. And then they take pictures with our Democrat Senator Dick Durbin.
And every time I tried to ask Dick Durbin about any of these issues, he refuses to answer my questions. You can Google William J. Kelly, Dick Durbin videos. I've had numerous, I guess what they call confrontational press conferences exchanges with Dick Durbin. Yeah, Chicago, Illinois politicians don't think that they need to answer my questions because they've got far too many reporters that are more than happy to ask them questions like, how can America do better do a better job of taking care of the migrants. And I would like to find out how Americans can do a better job of taking care of the Americans. This is not just a migrant crisis. This is an American crisis for American citizens. We have in the city of Chicago a violent crime epidemic. We have police officers that are being forced to babysit migrants. We have migrants staying at police stations. In addition to 18 other migrant shelters around the city of Chicago, migrants are overflowing the lobbies of police stations. How are police officers expected to arrest violent criminals when they're babysitting migrants? As you mentioned, there were there have been multiple robberies on DePaul's campus where female students are attacked by groups of 5 to 8 people, completely unidentified people. So we have no idea what these people look like or where they are, and sadly, there's no description and there's nobody in custody, Kat.
Why? Because they're like, do they have like masks on or something like that?
Who knows?
Yeah.
But what we do know is that they approach these girls, these young students, punch them in the face, steal their jewelry, their phones, their purses, their bags. And as you know, any kid that's going to college, they have hundreds of dollars of books in their bag that they need to do their homework that night. And what are these robbers going to do with books? I mean, they clearly don't have any need for books. At the bare minimum, they should at least let the students keep their books, right?
Yeah, no, and that just proves that these people are sadistic.
Yeah.
Like the people we are letting into the country here, these are not women and children. These are
Right.
military-aged men who are sadistic nuts. Like this is not.
Make no mistake about it. Every time I've gone to any of the migrant shelters to try to ask the migrants questions, I'm met with nothing but hostility and anger and rage. And it makes me wonder, who are these people? What are their names? What are their backgrounds? Do they have criminal records? What are their health issues, mental health? And now these children that have been literally brought here over the course of the last year or so are flooding the Chicago public schools. So CPS is now, it's no wonder that the president of the teachers union sends her kid to a Catholic school. She doesn't want her children to be in a public school where essentially the public schools, sadly, and it breaks my heart to say this, both my parents were Chicago public school teachers, but that was back at a time where they focused on teaching reading and writing, not hating America 101. And so sadly, the schools have gone from being essentially nothing more than a big foster family day camp for Chicago.
Illegal aliens, yeah.
For now it's essentially some kind of a refugee camp. And this is not what the taxpayers of Chicago are paying for public schools.
Yep. Well, we have to take a break. William J. Kelly. I wanted to get to so much.
We got way more. We've got a big week coming up. I'll have plenty for you next week.
Mm-hmm.
ReporterWilliamJKelly.com. If anyone wants to help my legal defense fund, we are going hard after not only Lightfoot but now Johnson for my media credentials. But I intend to keep showing up and keep asking questions and keep reporting and hopefully sharing what I find on the streets of Chicago with your listeners, Kat. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, William J. Kelly. Folks, go check him out and go follow him on Twitter. Just find him at Reporter William J. Kelly, and you can go to reporterwilliamjkelly.com. You have a great rest of your day. Folks, we are going to be back, and we're going to be chatting a little bit about Joe Biden's his latest appearance on the world stage, because he's yucking it up with this guy. He's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. And speaking of journalists, you're going to want to stick around, because this story I've got about the crown prince is going to make you scratch your head. Why is Joe Biden shaking hands with him and fist bumping this guy? We'll be back in just a little bit. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. Find me and all of my guests this morning on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm streaming live in studio. Joe Biden's latest derptastic appearance on the world stage. He's yucking it up with this guy. He's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and his name's Mohammed bin Salman. And Joe Biden forgot his name. So, one thing that really disturbs me about this story is just the hypocrisy, I guess. Joe Biden, he said that he was going to make them a pariah, Saudi Arabia. And the reason why Joe Biden said that was because Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, is responsible for the death of an American journalist. Uh, and here we have Joe Biden. About a year ago, he fist bumped the Saudi crown prince, now candidate Joe Biden, leading up to his presidency. He said that he was prepared to make bin Salman, the crown prince of Saudi, quote, pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. So Joe Biden couldn't remember his name this go around at the G20. I just can't believe that this is our commander in chief. We're led to believe that he's our commander in chief. I don't believe that he's our commander in chief. There's no way this guy got 81 million votes. But I'm really peeved off because here we have Joe Biden fist bumping the crown prince last year. Then we have him not even being able to remember his name this year. And, Jamal Khashoggi is the Washington Post journalist. He was murdered. And what? We're just going to forget that? We're going to exchange some pleasantries, some smiles, Joe? What happened to the candidate, Joe Biden, who said that, hey, we're going to make you pay the price and we're going to make you the pariah that you are? Is that all lip service? Yeah, of course it was. We're back on the other side. You can call me at 309-451-9299. I'm going to take your calls. Share with me where you were at on 9/11 22 years ago. So today marks the 22nd anniversary of the most deadliest terror attack. And my prayers are up today for the families who lost loved ones. Now, one thing that I'm told about 9/11 is the days after the terror attack, we banded together. We were one country, one nation, one people, and that's the way it should be. And I think that we need to come together again and try to help others. Love God, love people. We're going to be back on the other side. This is the Morning Buzz. Guys, Boston announces this climate emergency with today's high at a whopping, hang on, let me check my notes here. Yep, that's right. 87 degrees. Yes. So Boston, this was a couple of days ago over the weekend. I think it ended 9/8, so September 8th. Boston, they were announcing a climate emergency. And the reason why they announced a climate emergency was because it was 87 degrees outside. The horror. Oh man, I can't believe it's summer. Okay. So that means that it's that time of year for Democrats to use the excuse of climate change to fearmonger and to declare emergencies for what was once thought as natural weather phenomenon. Okay. New Jersey inmate claims that she was sexually assaulted by a male inmate while being housed in a women's prison. Yes, the male inmate was being housed in the women's prison. This is tragic. This woman was sexually assaulted. Now, this is a female New Jersey prison inmate. Now, this prison, Edna Correctional Facility for Women, this is not their first rodeo. Okay, so they've been filling the prison with men. So the inmate has been locked up since 2003, claiming she was assaulted in September and October of last year. She has now filed a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections over an alleged lack of corrective action taken by the guards about the sexually aggressive and harassing behavior of these transgender inmates. So I'm going to get to that story because this is not their first go around. This facility has been ordered to shut down after many allegations of sexual abuse, exploitation, and physical violence against prisoners from these transgender inmates. And we're going to be talking about that story plus Joe Biden. He has this derptastic performance at the G20. Now, this is just one of the derptastic moments. I'm sure we're going to get more because he's going to be there at the G20, and I've only seen this where he forgets the name of the crown prince in Saudi Arabia. So I'll be back on the other side, 7 a.m. This is the Morning Buzz. Thanks, Ryan, for texting in. On 9/11, I was in 8th grade. I still remember every detail that morning, where and what I was doing. I didn't completely understand what was happening. My 8th grade homeroom teacher still teaches in my school today. He was very good at remaining calm. Here's Jacqueline. What does it take for a Democrat supporting voters to get it? Is cities the only source of news is cities the only source of news you hear? These truths and realities of these Democrat failures you support. Doesn't that tell you something? I'm sure I'll see a few laugh emojis. Yeah, from our friends. Yeah, from Orange Man Bad, Orange Man Bad. Yeah, Jacqueline, thanks so much. Yes, we do. We try our best to try to provide information, not just at the national level, but also at the state level, local level. This morning, I was talking a lot about the Chicago Teachers Union. Go ahead and smash the like button if you're watching right now. Share this video out with your normie friends if you can. That greatly helps us out. Now, one thing I was talking about this morning was the hypocrisy, okay, of this Davis Gates, or of this Davis Gates. She criticized school choice not but a year ago. And in 2018, she went as far as to say that school choice was equivalent to segregation academies. So her whole thing is that school choice is racist. So this is a way for people to send their children to schools that are all white, and to avoid integrating schools with Black children. And she said that this is the civil rights struggle of our generation. She wrote this on Twitter last year, 2022. Now, get this, Davis Gates actually is a flaming hypocrite because she sends her kid to private school. So she said it was a difficult decision for her because there is not a lot to offer Black youth who are entering high school. at this private school she's now sending her child to. But she said that the South Side and the West Side Chicago public schools don't offer courses. Like, they don't offer enough courses. They're very marginal and very limited. Then she says that there's no extracurricular activities for him to participate in. So, in other words, she wants to make her son, or she wants to make sure that her son is offered all of these endless opportunities and possibilities. And she wants your kids to be subject to the abysmal opportunities at the South Side, West Side, Chicago schools, okay, public schools. Now, Chicago public schools, you're like, Kat, why you talk about Chicago public schools? Who cares? It's a huge, and it makes up a majority of, I think, schools in the state of Illinois. This is a massive district. We need to start consolidating these because I ran through the statistics here of how a lot of these schools are actually vacant. So over half of the Chicago schools are underutilized. Among the least utilized, the 5 most empty are at least are at less than 11% capacity. So you're looking at the 5 most empty schools. They're at 11% capacity, not at 100%, at 11% capacity. And at the most, 8% of their students are proficient in reading and 4% in math. This is all according to the Illinois Policy Institute. I'm just going to throw this up here so you can see it as well. The statistics, because the numbers don't lie. Okay, that's one thing that we know for sure is the numbers don't lie. And to sit there and say that, hey, we want you to send your kids to the Chicago public schools. Hey, we want more money. That's the big thing here, is because you look at the price breakdown. Chicago has some of the highest costs of education with an average spend of $29,000 per student. $29,000 per student. But yet they're not learning. They have the worst results. Davis Gates here, she claims that it's a lack of resources and that it's a spending issue. That's buzzword, lack of resources. That means that she wants more money for the Chicago Teachers Union and for the Chicago public schools. And that's the reason why she sent her kid to a private school, is because there's a lack of resources. Not true. I've got it right here. The spend is $29,000 per student. Then you look at the politics of it all. The NEA Fund for Children and Political Education, it's a PAC affiliated with one of the largest teachers unions, one of America's largest teachers, that's the Chicago Teachers Union. They spent just between 2021, January 1st, 2021, I've got the numbers here, September 30th, 2022, just in that time period, we're looking at $3.5 million, with the majority of those contributions going to Democrats. So this PAC raised all this money, $3.5 million, and it went to Democrats. This is insane. This is insanity. They have so much money, and the thing is, Democrats hate school choice because they fear breaking up this education monopoly that they've built. They don't want to break that up, and then they are also afraid of not being able to control the ideological narrative shoved down your kid's throat, and having the lack of controlling your kids, this breaking up of the educational monopoly. They don't like school choice because it does those things, and that keeps them up at night. These Democrats, they want to shove gender ideology, race ideology down your kids' throat, and they want to line their pockets with money from the taxpayer. That's what it comes down to. All right, we're going to be back in just a little bit. Smash that like button if you're watching, and share this out with your friends. Let me check my notes here. 87 degrees. Wait a second. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm checking my notes here in studio. You guys can see me live in studio, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm streaming live. Always do that Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. It's the morning buzz. And I've got this in my hands here. My formerly nicotine-stained fans. Rush Limbaugh says, The 87 degrees, I guess that was way too high of a temperature, and it led Boston to announce this climate emergency. A whopping 87 degrees. That's a climate emergency. We're going to get to that here in just a little bit. Plus, a New Jersey inmate claims that she was sexually assaulted by a male inmate. You want to guess the pronouns of the male inmate? Yes, the male inmate is transgender and he was housed in this women's prison. But this isn't the first go around, okay? This prison specifically, there have been many sexual assault allegations made by women who are there, these inmates, and they're being sexually assaulted by male transgenders, and nobody's doing a darn thing about it. And this Boston mayor, or this New Jersey mayor, is certainly not doing anything about it. So we're going to get to that story, but first, I do want to talk about Joe Biden and his derptastic appearance at the G20 summit for reasons known to only the White House. They let Joe Biden out of his room onto an airplane and on the world stage representing America in front of all of his world leader peers. Embarrassing. And I don't know, for reasons known to only the White House, I don't know why we're letting Joe Biden go out there and speak in public after traveling. Joe Biden speaking in public after traveling is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Joe Biden is one of those chocolates you open up the chocolate box, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to get. I'm going to take out this one. And then you bite into it and it's like a chocolate covered prune. It's disgusting. So this is derp level. I like to call Joe Biden a derp. He's a derp. Derp level is always high whenever Joe Biden appears in public, but it's so much worse. It's off the charts when he travels. It's a lot for Joe to travel. Here's some of my favorites. Now, this is from the G7. Now, this was a while ago, the G7. This isn't the G20. But Joe Biden actually confusing Syria and Libya like 3 different times. Okay, if it was 1 time, all right. If it was 2 times, okay. But he confuses it 3 different times, Libya and Syria. So let's take a listen here. This was him at the G7 summit. I'm going to get to the G20 in just a bit. Here we go.
Where we could work together with Russia. For example, in Libya, we should be opening up the passes to be able to go through and provide food assistance and vital assistance to a population that's in real trouble. I think I'm going to try very much hard to. It is. And by the way, there's places where I shouldn't be starting off and negotiating in public here, but let me say it this way. Russia has engaged in activities which we believe are contrary to international norms, but they have also bitten off some real problems they're going to have trouble chewing on. And for example, the rebuilding of Syria, of Libya, they're there. And as long as they're there without the ability to bring about some order in the region, and you can't do that very well without providing for the basic economic needs of people. So I'm hopeful that we can find an accommodation where we can save the lives of people for example, in Libya.
There you have it, folks. That's Joe Biden, and he confused Syria with Libya 3 different times. Now, look, I know you're like, give him a break, Kat. Give him a break. No, I'm not going to give him a break because he's kind of a jerk. And here's an example of that. Now, it's totally normal behavior to lash out at reporters for, asking simple questions of Joe Biden, or at least the Biden White House. Okay, that's totally normal behavior for the Biden White House. A reporter asked about conversations that Joe Biden had with world leaders that weekend at the G7. Okay, I haven't got to the G20 yet, but this is at the G7. These are just some of my favorite numbers. A reporter asked him some questions about a conversation he had. Joe Biden snapped at the question and claimed that he had only been president for 120 days, plus 8 years of vice president, plus 217 years as U.S. senator. Okay, he's been in politics for a long time, but give him a break. Okay, he's only been president for about 120 days. Here's Joe Biden snapping at a reporter at the G7 summit. Here we go.
When you're having these conversations with European allies who are very concerned about these sanctions, how do you justify that? And what are your plans to
120 days. Give me a break. Need time.
Whoa!
When you're
So
having
he
these
slams the podium too. You heard that. He slams the podium and he goes, 120 days. Give me a break. He just loses his mind there. Okay, so that was all the G7. Now let's make it to the news of the day. It's the G20. Okay, and that means 13 more world leaders for him to look like a boob in front of. Okay, so the Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, he's the same head. The head of the same Saudi Arabia that Joe Biden claimed he was going to make pariahs. He said that he's going to make Saudi Arabia pariahs. Now, last year at the G20, he broed out with this Mohammed bin Salman, and he gave him a little fist bump. He goes, all right, man, give me a fist bump. And they're like broing out and things. And I want to make this very clear. Saudi Crown Prince bin Salman ordered a 2018 murder of an American journalist from the Washington Post, Jamal Khashoggi. Okay? And that's according to U.S. intelligence agencies. And this sparked international outrage. People were very upset by it, naturally. And he was killed at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, where his body was actually dismembered and it subsequently disappeared. So not only did they kill him, they dismembered him and they made him disappear. An American a journalist. As a candidate, I want to also make this very clear. Joe Biden said that he was prepared to make bin Salman and Saudi Arabia, quote, pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. And I'm quoting Joe here. This year, Joe Biden couldn't remember the name of the Saudi prince. So last year, he was broing it out, fist bumping it with this guy after claiming that he was going to make pariahs. That he didn't do. He can't even remember the name of the Saudi prince. So let's take a listen here. You guys can see Joe Biden fumble and stumble on the YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Here we go.
And I particularly want to thank Prime Minister Modi and the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, and President von der Leyen and the European Commissions. And since he's not speaking today, I wanted to, or maybe he is speaking today. I had a note he wasn't speaking. At any rate, I'm going to stop there. And I particularly want to
I'm going to stop before my handlers take away my chocolate ice cream at night. Yes, that was Joe Biden. And it didn't seem like bin Salman was offended by the fact that he forgot his name. He also wasn't offended by the fact that he was, unsure if bin Salman was going to speak that day or not. No word if Joe Biden knows who pooped in his pants either. Joe Biden pooping in his pants, I bet. He didn't know who was pooping in his pants. Now, bin Salman, it seemed not to offend him because after, he introduced bin Salman and talked about bin Salman and forgot his name, they exchanged some pleasantries and smiles again. So this time it wasn't a fist bump, but they were smiling. And all fairness to Joe Biden, maybe he just doesn't know that he is actually the guy responsible for the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. It is Joe Biden. Maybe he just forgot that this is the guy who is responsible for the dismemberment of the body of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Remember, this is the beginning of the G20. There's a lot more meetings for Joe Biden to embarrass himself in front of world leaders yet to come. My question to you is this. Is any of this good for America? Having Joe Biden up there at the G20 speaking publicly before people, is any of that good for America? I don't think so. Okay, do want to shift gears. Let's talk about Boston announcing a climate emergency with a high of 87 degrees. So this happened. There was a heat emergency for September 7th through the 8th, and they blamed climate change. The Boston mayor, Michelle Wu. Look, folks, it's summer. Okay, it's that time of year. It's like right before fall. It kind of is like the dog days of summer. Labor Day is typically like one of the hottest days of the year. Democrats use this as an excuse of climate change, and they fearmonger, and then they declare these emergencies for what once was thought as a natural like weather phenomenon. It's 87 degrees. Okay, that's pretty normal for the end of summer. So some cable news, they were reporting that school closures were happening despite the fact that there's 3,000 air conditioning units that were just recently installed in Boston. Now the fans, they were installed as well. There were fans installed in about 14 buildings that can't handle the ACs due to electrical limitations. So they've actually installed a lot of ceiling fans if the AC units can't handle the 87 degrees due to electrical limitations. Unfortunately, Boston might be starting to see more buildings with electrical limitations because of the climate profit. The Boston mayor is now requiring all municipal buildings and major renovation operate without fossil fuel. So if you have major renovations, if you're building new buildings in Boston, then they have to be all wind and solar and operate off of that. Yeah, you are going to have electrical limitations if you're operating on wind and solar, and they're mandated, which I don't even think is legal. You can't legally force people to build buildings with just electric and just wind and solar and not use fossil fuels. Okay, you can't mandate people do that. So here's a quote from the mayor, Boston Mayor Wu. That's her last name here. Now she says, week after week, we see signs of extreme heat, storms, and flooding, and it reminds us of a closing window to take climate action. My God. The benefits of embracing fossil fuel free infrastructure in our city hold no boundary across industries and communities, and Boston will continue using every possible tool to build green, clean, healthy, and prosperous future for our city deserves. Prosperous future our city deserves. It was 87 degrees, lady. Like, it's so normal. In other words, so that quote there I just read to you, the climate will destroy humanity, but we must also rely on the climate to save humanity. So she's relying on wind and solar to save humanity, but the climate is also going to destroy humanity. You start to see this. Seems kind of ironic that the climate is supposed to save us and destroy us at the same time. It's so cult-like. These people are cult-like because they have no logic. That's how you know it's a cult. It's because there's no logic. Now, too bad fuel-free infrastructure is an absolute lie, first of all. How would everything be built? Of course, you're going to build these things using, I would assume, that would require fossil fuels in order to build these things. Even if everything ran on wind and solar, fossil fueled power sources will need to be running in the background at all times to try to fill in the gaps whenever there's not sun or whenever there's not wind. Let's be realistic here. Wu claims that this step is necessary to advance racial and economic justice. Okay, great. Now, the weather has adapted to the left's highest evil, racism. The titanic struggle that humanity presently faces in all aspect of our lives, it's racism. But wouldn't extreme heat like Boston affect white people more, considering that since skin cancer is 20 times more common in white people than black people? That's just a fact. Okay, so I don't know what she's talking about here. Racial, economic justice. So the extreme heat, does it affect black communities more? I'm confused. Climate alarmists, they are going to make up just about anything these days. Race, economic disparities, racial disparities, whatever. They're going to make up anything to push these awful policies through, like demanding that the municipalities all use fossil-free infrastructure. They don't need an emergency to scare people anymore. They took a normal summer day for Boston, and they made it into some sort of emergency. I want to point this out, and then I got to take a break. God has already established a time when Earth is going to be destroyed, not by water, not by fire, at the time of Christ's return. Then the earth will be remade. So yes, the world, the Earth is going to end. Biblical prophecy always comes true. It has come true. It always will come true. That is the truth. And the earth will end at a period of time. We don't know when. It's when Christ returns. And that doesn't mean that we're not good stewards of the earth. I'm not saying that. But the earth is not eternal. There's two things the Bible tells us last forever, and that's the word of God and people. Everyone will live forever, either with God or apart from him. Okay, so the followers of Jesus, they're going to spend their time focused on his word, knowing it, living it, pointing it out to others, and pointing others to him. So there's only two things. The word of God is going to last forever, and people are going to last forever. Okay, the earth will end. It says that, the Bible does. So wanted to point that out. Yes, it's going to end. It's not shocking and that's the thing that these liberals are so bothered by, these climate alarmists are so bothered by. They don't understand that that is a fact, and you just have to accept it because it's biblical prophecy. And yeah, I'm okay with it. You're not okay with it because you're a raging atheist, likely. All right, I'm going to be back. Let's talk about. I saw this. This is an amazing story. College football, it's back. And these college football fans actually saved a cat. So this cat was hanging from the rafters, and the people below actually had an American flag. If you guys want to see the video, you're going to have to tune into the live stream that's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Be sure to like and share with your normie friends. I'll be back on the other side. Well, there's something you don't see every day. College football fans, they saved a cat. So the cat was hanging from the rafters, and the people below had an American flag, and gravity took over. And I have never seen anything like this. So this happened yesterday, and I thought it only happened in cartoons. So let's take a listen. And if you're watching, you can see the cat on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm always live streaming on social media. Give me a quick follow. That's Cat Peterson 929, and be sure to subscribe to that channel on YouTube. So let's take a listen. Here we go to the way it sounded. So the cat's like dangling. The cat's dangling on the rafters here, and then the crowd, like, he starts to lose his grip, the cat, and he goes down to one paw. Here he is. He goes down to one paw, and then he goes all the way down, and he gets caught on an American flag. Now the cat is not very happy. He's like squirming around. There's so many people. He's freaked out. He fell. But the college football fans, they hold him up, similar to that of the cartoon like in The Lion King. They hold him up above their heads, and they're like, the crowd's just going wild because they're so happy the cat lived. So the cat survived this fall. Now, seriously, you know the cartoon too, okay? The building's on fire, Bugs Bunny, or someone is yelling from the window for help, and the firefighters run in, and then they have the trampoline, and they're trying to catch bugs. The cartoon, right? And then only instead of Bugs Bunny jumping out, it's an elephant, or yeah, and then they crash through the trampoline. So the elephant crashes through the trampoline. So that's what I was thinking of when I watched this video. It's quite incredible. Thankfully for these four dudes with the American flag, it was only a cat, not an elephant, like in the cartoon. Otherwise, it would have just busted through the American flag. But the fact that they caught the cat with an American flag is what made this even more thrilling to watch. The best part was after saving the cat, were these guys holding up the cat very triumphantly over their heads as if it was some sort of trophy. And the crowd just loved it. They were eating it up. And look, cats are known for being skittish. And whenever my friends come over, I mean, he was very skittish. He was hanging on like by a claw for dear life. This cat, the scaredy cat. That's not just something you call nerds in high school or in grade school. A scaredy cat. Cats are actually pretty scared. My friends, when they come over, I've got one cat that is kind of skittish and hides underneath like the nearest piece of furniture. The other one is like, okay, you're here, and I'm gonna come up and purr in your face. So the cat was walking around the football stadium, I guess, very nonchalantly. So I wouldn't imagine that this guy is a scaredy cat. He was very scared after he like fell off the rafters there. But maybe this cat was, hearing people chant, "Let's go, Brandon. Let's go, Brandon." Can't say the other term or the other phrase. But he wanted to join in on the "Let's go, Brandon" chant. So he's walking around, and he hops up on the railing to start drinking the lid of somebody's beer because he thought maybe it was like a saucer of milk or something. I would imagine. You see the foam at the top of the beer, and you're like, "Oh, is that milk?" And he goes over, starts licking the lid of somebody's beer, and next thing you know, he's like falling over off of the rail, and he's stumbling and fumbling a little bit after shouting, "Let's go, Brandon." The cat survived at the end of the day. This is a really cool story. I recommend you go check it out in the video on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I do have to take a break, folks. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. Joining me next, Scott Robbins with Scott's Takes. Coming up in just a little bit, we're going to be talking about this 11-year-old. I mean, I'm just going to call him the king because he is just an ice cold little man. And he shares his story with some sort of reporter. And he actually shot this home intruder. So he mocks this 11-year-old boy. Imagine being 11 years old. He mocks the intruder for crying after he shot him in the leg. An incredible story. And I always look for the good guy with the gun stories because I love myself a good quality good guy with a gun story, and I actively look for those. Scott Robbins out today, technical difficulties. So we're going to try to correct those for tomorrow, Tuesday. It happens around 7:40, 7:35 every morning, where Scott Robbins from Markley, Van Camp and Robbins comes on with me, and he gives his take on the news of the day, and he's hilarious, folks. So you won't want to miss him on Markley, Van Camp and Robbins. That airs tonight on Cities at 8 o'clock, and we'll be back at it hopefully tomorrow, Tuesday. Technical difficulties, it happens. We're going to work on it. Chicago Teachers Union president busted. She sends her son to a private school. Oh, that's kind of hypocritical of you, lady. So we're going to get to that story as well. But like I said, this New Jersey story is real disturbing, and this is a bit of heavy lifting, so stay with me. It's tough, but you got to know that this is happening in not only New Jersey, but in prisons all around. Now, I'm not too sure about the transgender at the McLean County Jail. I don't believe that he is being housed with the women. There is a transgender male. Same thing, kind of like sexual assault type case. It was actually a rape, from what I understand, of a minor. And he is being imprisoned at the McLean County Jail. I'd have to look at the details there. From what I understand, he was in isolation at one point, or like he was like in his own kind of, he wasn't congregating with the males or the females. So he was kind of given his own space, which, if we're going to have transgenders in prisons, I honestly believe that the best thing to do is create a transgender wing of the prison and put them all in the same place. Like, that's the only way we're going to ensure things like this don't happen. Another male inmate being accused of sexual assault after he was moved to a women's prison. Oh boy. So a female New Jersey prison inmate claims that she was sexually assaulted by a transgender convict whose aggressive actions were not stopped by the staff inside of this correctional facility for women. It's called the Edna Mahan or something like that, this facility in New Jersey. Now, this inmate, the female who was sexually assaulted allegedly, has been locked up since 2003. And she claims that she was assaulted in September and October of last year. She has now filed a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections over this alleged lack of corrective action taken by the guards about the sexual, aggressive, and harassing behavior of the transgenders who are in the women's wing of the prison. Okay, so I actually toured the McLean County jail. It's a great jail. They do a great job there. And this is not happening at the McLean County Jail. They are doing the right thing, and they are keeping this transgender individual who claims to be transgender, who is accused, and I think he's been convicted of that now. I have to double check on that story. But if at the time when I questioned the police about it, it was, I think the police officer I spoke with actually said, I'm going to spare you the details. It's disturbing. And I said, okay. All I know is that it was the rape of a minor. And they, when I went and I toured the jail at the McLean County Jail, it's a very different vibe. So I wasn't allowed, obviously, in the men's section of the jail. They don't bring visitors into the men's section. I was actually allowed in the women's section of the jail. So very different dynamics when you look at the women's section of the jail and the men's section of the jail. When I went and I saw from outside, like the glass, the men, they were exercising, very rowdy. They were running around, jumping. There was like workout facility there. It was like a gym. And then the women, right, they were like all kind of congregated around. I think there was like some sort of like small group that was happening or something. But very different dynamics. So one was very like, whoo boy. And then the other one. So you bring men in their aggressive energy into female spaces. Things like this are going to happen, where we had a male in New Jersey sexually assault this female in the female section because he was placed living in the female section. So this same prison has been the subject of a number of scandals after they've housed many male criminals in with the women. The facility has since been ordered to shut down after many allegations of sexual abuse, exploitation, physical violence against the prisoners. Big yikes. So this isn't just a sole incident here. This is a lot of them built up over time. Basically, at some point, progressives in New Jersey thought that this would be a good idea to house men with women because they one day claimed to identify as the opposite gender. So that's the thing about transgenderism. It changes day to day as well. So they might identify as a woman now, but tomorrow, who's to say that they don't identify as a man? So are you going to house men who aren't transgender with women? At this point, I mean, if you're going to do this, then we just might as well commingle them all together. I don't think that that's a good option. Like I said, I went and I toured the prison. There is a reason why women are separate from the men because of the way they conduct themselves. The men were obviously very aggressive. They were working out. They were moving around a lot, and they were yelling. It was like substantially louder than the women's prison. So I was able to go and tour with the women, be inside there. I actually talked to a couple of the inmates and said hello. Very much not a threatening situation, but if I were to be inside that men's unit, I would feel kind of threatened. Just because of the way, not to say that, I mean, they are criminals, right? But man, they act very differently. Men and women just act differently. Now, these New Jersey people, they are starting to house men and women together because transgenders claim that they're the opposite gender just that day. And who knows, it might change day to day. And then after a number of scandals, including pregnancies, assaults, the governor decided to eventually reverse course. One man convicted of filming pornographic videos of his 7-year-old daughter, along with his male accomplice, were just two of the many women who were housed, or men who were housed in this prison with the women. Okay, activists fight for the rights of the male criminals to exploit the system to be housed in women's prisons. Okay, that's what they're doing. They want to be housed in the women's prisons, probably so they won't get beat up. Okay, they were filming pornographic videos of this one guy's 7-year-old daughter. Likely, if you're in a men's prison and they find out you did something like that, you might get beat up. And the men are the ones who always do the sexual assault in these women's prisons. It's never the opposite way around. Women never want to go be housed with the men. Okay, that's one thing I've got to point out here. And if you had any doubt that the transgender activists hated women, here's all the proof you need. They actively target women under the guise of equality, and they'll call you slurs if you even mention safety. So the fact of me just mentioning all of this to you and talking about this story, I'm going to be called a trans hater. I'm going to be called a bigot. A Canadian study found that nearly half of trans women inmates were convicted of sex crimes. Trans women. So these are men who identify as women. They were convicted of sex crimes. These are people who are violent, and 92% of them were incarcerated for violent crimes. So a lot of these trans women inmates, they're sexual predators and they're violent criminals. Not surprisingly, trans men never sought to transfer. So there is no cases really of where trans men, so women who identify as men, they never want to transfer over to the men's prison. I don't think that that's shocking. There's a reason we never hear about trans men or women fighting to enter male prisons. It's because they will be assaulted if they do. Police are like these policies. Look, they're being made across the world because of so-called inclusion that could subsequently enable mass sexual assault against women, and everyone is suddenly quiet about women's rights. Okay, where are the activists? Where are the activists for women's rights? But hey, at least we're being inclusive. do have to take a break. When we come back, I've got more stories for you, specifically this 11-year-old. You guys are going to like this story. I always look for the good guy with the gun stories, because unfortunately, there's a narrative out there that guns kill kids. That's like the number one killer of kids. That's not true. When you break down the statistics and you remove 15 to 19-year-old black males who are in gangs killing each other with guns, uh, then it's like substantially it goes towards like drowning accidents, cancer, car accidents. Those are like the number one killers of kids, not guns. Okay, so this 11-year-old kid actually mocking this intruder after he comes into his home, tries to invade his home. He says, "Stop, or I'm going to kill you with my gun." And the guy still doesn't believe. Like, I don't know if he didn't believe that he was going to shoot him, or if he even thought it was a real gun, or what happened. But this intruder eventually gets shot. He gets shot in the leg, and he cries like a little baby. So, and the 11-year-old points out that he cries like a little baby. This guy for the win. I'm going to come back. We're going to tell you about that story next. Folks, if you're watching right now, go ahead and smash that like button. Smash the like button. Today is the anniversary, the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. In the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to be visiting with Jerry Vogler from the McLean County VA. We're going to be talking about that, plus a couple of other things, memorials possibly in the local area. So stay tuned. We're also going to talk about that 11-year-old and the Chicago's Teachers Union. So the Chicago Teachers Union president, she's on blast because she's being a hypocrite, and she sent her kid to a private school, despite saying that, school choice is racist. And she compared private schools to, what was it, segregated academies or whatever, is what she said on Twitter just a couple of years ago. So very hypocritical. We'll be back in just a bit. 22 years after 9/11, and Joe Biden will become the first president to not honor the victims in New York, Virginia, or Pennsylvania. He's actually going to the military base in Alaska. I don't know why. It doesn't shock me that he's going to be the first president to not honor those victims there in New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia. There's going to be all kinds of memorials today at the New York's World Trade Center, the Pentagon in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, or the Pentagon and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Now, Joe Biden, I don't know why he's not going to those places, but he's not. The hijacked plane, the attacks claimed nearly 3,000 lives. Now, I wasn't alive, I was a baby at the time, so I don't remember anything that went on. I just know the history behind it, and I know that there's a lot of questions. Now, Americans, we're going to be looking back on this today, the horror and the legacy of 9/11, and there's going to be all kinds of memorials at the firehouses, the city halls, and we're observing the 22nd anniversary of the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil. And one thing that people tell me, so I wasn't around for it, but people tell me that we are one country, one nation, one people after that terror attack happened. And that was the feeling, that was the sentiment that we are one nation under God and we had our identity. Our identity was, how can we band together and help one another? And, we're just going to remember today. And we're going to be talking with Jerry Vogler on the other side. I'll ask him, hey, where were you at? Jerry Vogler is a veteran. He is the superintendent of the McLean County VA. So I'm sure that he's going to have a story about where he was that day. If you guys are listening right now, go ahead and give me a text and tell me about where you were that day on 9/11. 309-451-9299. I'll share that with you. And in the 8 o'clock hour, I'm going to be asking you guys, hey, call in, tell me where you were that day. I think that it's important to remember the fallen, the 3,000 lives that were claimed by these hijacked plane attacks. True evil, just truly evil. All right, we'll be back on the other side talking about the 11-year-old boy who shot a home intruder, and then he mocked that intruder for crying after he shot him, which I love this 11-year-old boy. Plus, we're going to be visiting with Jerry Vogler from the McLean County VA for Veterans Corner. Happens every Monday at about 8 a.m. or 8:06 a.m. That's next. Good morning. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. If you guys are watching, go ahead and smash that like button and share this out with your normie friends. We're going to be back talking about the Chicago's Teachers Union president. She was busted because she actually sends her son to a private school now after saying private schools were segregated prisons or whatever, or segregated places of learning. So we're going to be back with that story next. If you're watching right now, go ahead and smash the like button and share this out with your normie friends. Chicago Teachers Union. We've got to talk about the president because she got busted, folks, for sending her kid to a private school. Now she's defending her decision to send her freshman son to a Catholic school on the south side of Chicago, and she's facing backlash for that decision. Now, the reason why she sends her kid to this Catholic school now is, quote, it was a very difficult decision for us because there's not a lot to offer Black youth who are entering high school at this private school. But then she goes on and she says, in many of our schools on the south side and west side, the course offerings are very marginal and limited. Then the other thing, and it was a very strong priority for us, is his ability to participate in co-curricular and extracurricular activities. And quite frankly, those don't exist in many of the schools, the Chicago public schools, high schools in particular. So Uh, in other words, she wants to make sure her son is offered endless possibilities while your kids are subject to the abysmal opportunities in the Chicago public school system. So she was also opposed to the Illinois Invest in Kids program. It offers 75% income tax credit and provides scholarships to low income students to attend non public schools in Illinois. She was against that. These people are against school choice. And I'll tell you why here. These people Democrats are against school choice because they fear the breaking up of this educational monopoly, this education monopoly that they've built up. And they desperately want to control what your kids think about LGBTQism, about Black Lives Matter. They want to control this ideological war, and they want to win the culture war. And the only way they can do that is by manipulating your children into believing this nonsense. But also, they don't want to lose any of their money. So let's break down the money here. $3.5 million given just from January of 2021 to September 30th of 2022. I've got the numbers here. The National Education Association Fund for Children and Political Education, the PAC, which is affiliated with the CTU, the Chicago Teachers Union, spent more than $3.5 million, with the majority of those contributions going to Democrats. So they spent all of this money, this PAC, on Democrat politicians. And I mean, it's very clear. Um, we've got the number here. $29,000 per student is the average spend that Chicago has on their kids. So they have some of the highest costs of education with an average spend of $29,000 per student. But yet they've got some of the worst results in the world, and definitely in the nation, when it comes to reading literacy or literacy rate, math. They can't do math at grade level. I mean, we've got the statistics here. Plus, get this, they have all of these abysmal rates with like no students. So over half of the Chicago schools are underutilized, and among the least utilized, the 5 most empty are at less than 11% capacity. So the 5 most empty schools in the Chicago public school system, they are at 11% capacity. And of that 11% capacity, most of at most, and we're being generous here, 8% of their students are proficient in reading, 4% in math. So this is according to the Illinois Policy Institute. They've got the numbers here. We're looking at 50 Chicago public schools. They ran the numbers last year. No fourth grade students scored at grade level in these 50 Chicago public schools. No fourth grader scored at grade level in either reading or math. And of the 50 schools, no fifth grade students scored at grade level in either math or reading. So that's kind of insane. And it just goes to show you how big this district is. It's huge. The Chicago Public Schools, they're a mess. They're probably the worst in the country, district wide. They have so many schools. In some cases, there's no students in these schools. And uh, like there's no occupancy, no capacity. Like they're not filling the schools, and the students that are filled in these schools, they're not performing at grade level when it comes to math and reading. Sad. And she's going to sit there and say it's due to a lack of resources, aka we need to throw more money at it. No. Like I told you, some of the highest costs in education nationwide, they spend $29,000 per student, but they've got the worst results. It's atrocious. We're going to be back talking with Jerry Vogler, who's on the line with me, about a few things for Veterans Corner. Plus, today is the 22nd anniversary of 9/11, and I'm going to ask Jerry where he was on 9/11 and if he has a memory of it. So we'll come back in just a little bit. Do as I say, not as I do, Democrats. Here is another example, and we're going to be getting to this in just about 20 minutes. We're going to talk about the Chicago Teachers Union president, and she's defending her decision to send her freshman son to a Catholic school on the south side of Chicago after she's facing backlash about this decision because, just in 2018, I think it was, she called private schools segregation academies. What? She said school choice is racist. Then she says that the school choice is just a way to avoid integrating schools with Black children. She said that it's the civil rights struggle of our generation. Now, she said this last year in 2022. That's what she wrote on Facebook or on Twitter. Now she comes out and she sends her kid to a private school and she has school choice. She doesn't want you to have school choice, but she wants school choice for her kid. And I'll tell you why she's sending her kid to a private school instead of the Chicago public schools in just a minute here. Plus, we're going to get to this 11-year-old who shot this home invader. And he actually mocks the intruder for crying like a little girl. So this 11-year-old, took aim and warned the guy several times that he was going to open fire. And the intruder, of course, didn't listen because he's a criminal. And he shot him. So I always look for the good guy with the gun story because that's why we've got guns, okay, to protect ourselves from the government and from criminals. Joining me on the line, it's Jerry Vogler from the McLean County VA for Veterans Corner. We do this Monday morning at about 8:06 a.m. Every Monday morning. We haven't done it in a couple of days because I was out on vacation. Jerry, it's great to catch up with you. Now, one thing I want to talk about before we get into today's regular scheduled programming for the McLean County Veterans Corner, I want to talk about Americans looking back on the horror and the legacy of 9/11 today and ask you, Jerry, where you were that day, if you remember where you were that day, and what about 9/11 can you tell me? Because I wasn't around. I'm 24, so it was 20. I was 2 years old, so I have no memory of this at all. So tell me where you were.
I was actually getting ready for work to come into work for GTE, the phone company, and I listened to the radio as I'm doing that, and I heard that a plane apparently had veered off course and hit one of the World Trade Center towers. And I thought, that's terrible. So I immediately went in and flipped the TV on, and I'm watching it, and another few minutes go by, and on the TV screen, I see a plane flying near the World Trade Center. And it's like, what in the world is going on here? And then it crashed into the second tower. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that this was not a, misguided pilot or, some type of a malady that the person had to crash the plane. It was an attack. I was shocked, finished getting ready, went to East Empire Street where I worked at the phone company. Everybody was gathered around the TV in the cafeteria break room. And not a whole lot of work got done that whole morning. But it became clearer and clearer that the horror of the plane crash was just the beginning. Most of us were standing around talking before the first tower fell that there was no way that they were going to be able to get those fires out and save the people that were above those floors that were hit. Totally shocked. And then, of course, the aftermath with the great plumes of smoke and ashes and debris blowing down the city streets of Chicago. It happened to be our office, which we had just become Verizon, was right next door to the World Trade Center, and it got half buried in debris. So it was a total shock that it happened, and then it was just kind of this dull in your pit of your stomach of not really hopelessness, but tragedy. That you couldn't do a darn thing about. So that's my story, and it was a very quiet, almost remote remorse feeling throughout the building where I worked, and there's about 700 people that worked there. So it was a pretty down day for everybody.
Well, being in your position as the McLean County Veterans Affairs Superintendent, I don't know how many people that come through. I'm sure a lot veterans who come through who were shipped off during the global war on terror, right? So George Bush, he created this comprehensive plan to try to seek out and stop terrorists, sending our guys over to places like Afghanistan. And what about that have you seen over the course of these last 20 years? Uh, and you obviously served not in that era, but you served in the military. What about these veterans is different, maybe from a Vietnam War vet or a Korean War vet or something like that?
It was a strange revelation going on for everybody that served back during the Vietnam era, because even though this is 1990, there was still a lot of animosity and hard feelings about the Vietnam War and its aftermath. Veterans weren't engaging in benefits and other things in the public sector because of the way they were treated when they came back. And when Desert Storm hit, the country was still very divided. The day after the 9/11 hit, the beginning of Desert Shield, there was a joining of arms by almost everybody in the country that this won't stand, that we need to bind together and begin to respect those people that are going to defend us against these type of attacks. And I think it was a total turnaround for everybody that was opposed to the military, opposed to everything we did militarily. So I see a lot of people from Afghanistan and so forth. They were pretty darn young when Desert Shield and Desert Storm hit. So they had their own first experiences, but they were treated very much differently by the general public and our government when they came back home. There was support for it. The VA has absolutely done spectacular improvements to its health care and respect for the military.
Mm. Well, we are remembering all of those who perished and lost their loved ones during this tragedy today. It's the 22nd anniversary of 9/11. 3,000 lives were claimed after those planes were hijacked. And Jerry, thanks for, sharing your experiences and what you've seen in your position now as the McLean County Superintendent, VA Superintendent. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is kind of short notice, but a reminder of what we talked about 3 or 4 weeks ago. That is, there will be a 9/11 remembrance ceremony at the Firemen's Memorial in the north end of Miller Park at 10 o'clock this morning.
10 o'clock this morning. Be sure to go out. Now, before we move away from this, and I just wanted to ask you this, being that you've, seen presidents come and go, this is the first time, and he's facing backlash for this. Now, do you have any reason, or do you have any idea as to why the reason Joe Biden is choosing to go to the Alaskan military base? I think it's Anchorage is what it's called. Instead of, now he's the first president to do this. Most presidents, they go to New York or they go to the Pentagon, they go to Pennsylvania, they go to either New York, Virginia, or Pennsylvania. Okay, that's where they go. Joe Biden is the first president to not do this after 9/11. So I don't know why the military base in Anchorage. Do you have an idea?
Yes, I think it's got nothing to do with the military base in Alaska. It's got to do with the announcement that the Biden administration made, about 10 days ago, that they were canceling all of the already agreed to leases for natural gas and oil drilling in Anwar, Alaska, and that he needed to do that to placate the climate change people at the time when he had just made that announcement. And all heck was breaking loose because we went from energy independent to now we're not independent. And now we've cut back the possibility of becoming independent again because of all those gas and oil leases being canceled. So I think it was strictly political. And I'm not going to say anything against the presidency, but this person does not represent what I would prefer to see in a president concerning 9/11.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and he's the first one. So I thought that was interesting. He's already facing some backlash for that. So I was curious if there was something I didn't know. Now, I did hear about that in Alaska, the natural gas, the climate change emergencies, blah, blah, blah. I just didn't know. I'm reading all of these reports. Mainstream news is kind of creating this narrative that this is some sort of ceremony, and to somebody who might be younger or not understand the history, they might think, and the way this is being framed in the news is that this is some sort of like ceremony specific for 9/11. But I think he's just there for political reasons, and he's just happening to do some sort of ceremony at the military base. So, Jerry.
Yeah, and I think there's one other thing involved here, and that is that the excuse or reason is being spun that, well, it's been more than 20 years now, and we need to move on because we don't recognize December 7th, 1941 anymore, and that's nonsense. Military organizations in cities across the country have ceremonies for December 7th, 1941. And this was very similar on 9/11 as to what happened to us at Pearl Harbor. So to make that kind of a spin is just total nonsense.
Mm. Well, let's talk about the did you know for today's Veterans Corner. And I'm just going to let you go with it or go for it. This only person who is buried at the Arlington National Cemetery who was born on that property, actually. Can you tell me about James Parks?
Yeah, James Park was born into slavery in 1843 at Arlington, which of course was before the Civil War. It was the home of General Robert E. Lee and his wife, Mary Custis. And Mary Custis was the daughter of the adopted son of George Washington. This is Martha Washington's child by a previous marriage. And it's kind of interesting that it kind of went down the chain here that General Lee actually owned the property at the time. And of course, that was more of a reflection that women were second-class citizens, even though the estate was probably hers to begin with. Colonel Custis, who became a colonel, he was the adopted son of George Washington. He willed in his will that he would have the slaves in his household freed 5 years after he passed. Well, by the time he passed in 1857, the Civil War had already started. However, even though Arlington was in the South, they honored Custis's wish and they freed all the slaves, including Park. However, James Park decided that he wanted to stay on. He was a teenager. And as a result of that, he stayed on until almost at the time of his passing at age 83. He had 22 kids. And after the Civil War and a few decades after that, it was decided that General Lee's old house, which they call Arlington House, was going to be renovated and brought up to the glory that it was when Lee was assigned there. Because Arlington Cemetery was started in the front yard of the General Lee Arlington House, kind of as a thumb in your eye to the South and especially to Lee. As a result of that, Park was enormously helpful because of his history at Arlington House to help them restore the whole thing. And they thought enough of him that he's the only person that I'm aware of that was given the right, other than relatives of politicians and some politicians, that is buried at Arlington Cemetery, who was also born there. Of course, it wasn't a cemetery when he was born, but he was born at Arlington House.
Well, did you know? I like that story. That's a crazy story. So Park's long knowledge of the Arlington House history helped enormously with the restoral of the Arlington House. He was also buried at the Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors, as you said. So we do have to take a break, Jerry, but I so do appreciate you filling us in on today's Did You Know? Now, there's a lot more to the Veterans Corner. You guys can check it out at cities929.com. And if you missed any of today's Veterans Corner, it's always posted there in the podcast. So, Jerry, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, can I spend 10 seconds here? There is going to be a VA benefit fair at the community room in the Normal Public Library today from 9 till noon. I'm sorry, tomorrow, 9 till noon. And then on Friday, in front of the old courthouse, the county museum, beginning at 11 o'clock, we'll have a MIA POW ceremony.
Awesome. And folks, that's tomorrow from 9 a.m. to noon. Is that correct, Jerry, at the Normal Public Library?
That's correct.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Jerry. I appreciate it. And you have a great rest of your day. Folks, if you're listening right now, Jerry told us about where he was on 9/11, 22 years ago. If you guys could call me with your stories, I wasn't around. I was just a babe, just a small thing, and I don't remember. So go ahead, call in. This is your chance to call in and tell me about the time where the planes, this is just so tragic, where the planes were hijacked and they killed 3,000 people. 3,000 lives were taken that day. One of the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil. We are honoring the fallen and we are remembering the legacy of 9/11 today. Give me a call. That's 309-451-9299. Tell me about where you were that day. 309-451-9299. coming up in just a little bit, Joe Biden, he's got this latest derptastic, that's what I'm going to call it, derptastic appearance on the world stage. He's yucking it up with the crown prince of Saudi Arabia and Mohammed bin Salman is his name. And Joe Biden actually forgot his name. And, this just reminds me of last year, what Joe Biden did with this guy. He like broed out with him and gave him a fist bump last year. And this is the guy responsible for killing an American journalist, Khashoggi is his name. And he was dismembered and disappeared. And Joe Biden said, and I'm quoting him here, that he was going to make them a pariah that they are, Saudi Arabia, that is. And instead, last year, what he did, he said that on the campaign trail. He said that as a candidate for the presidency, he said that he was going to make them a pariah that they are for this killing of the Washington Post reporter. But guess what Joe Biden did? He went up and he broed out with the Saudi prince, the Saudi Arabian prince. So we're going to talk about that, his latest derptastic appearance on the world stage. He's yucking it up with Crown Prince. And then he also forgot his name. Now, first, I do want to get into some of these, where was I on 9/11? So I was 2 years old. I don't have any memory of it. But a lot of you remember exactly what you were doing that day. 3,000 people died. And we pause today. We're remembering them. And we are praying for those who lost their loved ones on this is the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil. I was on Interstate 70 east of Indianapolis, going to pitch an invention to a mop head company. I was actually listening to the great Bob and Tom comedy show. I've heard of that. And they got very serious and started reporting the news. You may not recall that this comedy show was actually noted for having one of the most accurate and serious reporting of the news story, this news story of the hijacked planes. Of all the commercial news stations that day, the company I was making the pitch for the mop was in no mood to receive any of my ideas that day. So there's that one. And then somebody else texted in, and you can text in where you were that day. They said, I was a ramp agent working at Federal Express in Memphis, Tennessee. I actually worked the outbound Boston flights. I had just gotten off work after working all night. I sat down to eat, looked up at the TV, and I saw it all unfolding. I never finished my meal, and I did not want to. My heart sank, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I ended up having to go right back to work. I have never forgotten that day, and I never will. It's very sad and pathetic that Joe Biden has shown nothing but disrespect, disregard, and total dismissal of our country and every disaster and tragedy that this country has endured while he has been in office. He has acted disgraceful and disrespectful. The fact that he's going to Alaska to the military base on this day is absolutely not surprising. He is an absolute embarrassment and disgrace. Yeah, well, and his withdrawal from Afghanistan was terrible as well, and his inconsiderate actions, and that's not me saying that, that's the Golden Star families who have said that about Joe Biden, the people who lost those 13 service members in that Afghanistan withdrawal. So 9/11, I was working in Florida near several military bases. There were 3 of us traveling to one of our offices. We arrived at the office and we couldn't find anybody until we made it to the conference room. Everybody was there, gathered around the TV watching. We were all sent home to be with our families. The silence of no airplanes for days after was so intense. The planes started again. They were from the bases I lived by. Very interesting. Well, you guys can text in where you guys were on 9/11, 22 years ago. This is the 22nd anniversary. Now, one thing people always seem to commonly tell me about 9/11 was the days after, where everybody felt like they were one country, one nation. We had an identity. We were one people, and that's the way it should be. We have an identity crisis. When I ask you, what does it mean to be an American? Can you really say, I mean, do young people know what to say? Do you know what to say? What does it mean to be an American? And I think that it's everybody coming together and trying to help one another in tragedies like this. So it is awful that Joe Biden is going to this military base in Alaska. I'm sure he's going to talk about his green weenie climate change crap, and he's going to go there and play politics. So I wouldn't doubt that there's going to be some sort of like small ceremony that he goes to and makes mention of it, but they're trying to get people to forget about it. Probably for certain reasons that I won't get into here on this program. Maybe someday, but not today. All right. So, Chicago Teachers Union president. She's busted for sending her son to a private school. She's a hypocrite. Duh. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit on the other side. You're listening to the Morning Buzz. It's 8:33 a.m. on a Monday morning. Thanks so much for sending in where you guys were on 9/11. I so do appreciate it. We are going to be talking about the Chicago Teachers Union, Biden's latest derptastic appearance on the world stage. I can't wait to talk about the Chicago Teachers Union because these Democrats are do as I say, not as I do it. It's that way with the mask mandates. It's that way with the vax mandates. They're not all vaccinated, I'll tell you that much, because they'd all be dead. Okay, so they're not getting the vaccine. But we are going to be talking about Joe Biden. And what's really sickening to me is this journalist, he died and was dismembered by this crown prince at the hand of the crown prince. He was behind it. And Joe Biden, while he was on the campaign trail, said that he was going to make them, Saudi Arabia, the pariah that they are. And instead of doing that, he's fist bumping this guy at last year's G20. Now he's at this year's G20. And he forgot his name. So, I mean, in all fairness to Joe Biden, he might not have known that this is the guy responsible for the murder of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. It is Joe Biden. Maybe he forgot. Maybe he wasn't briefed about that. But he's sitting there smiling and exchanging pleasantries with this guy. And he said that he was going to make them the pariah that they are. But he didn't. So we're going to get into that. It's really, truly awful what happened to Khashoggi. And it's awful what our president is doing, fist bumping the guy. Come on. That was last year's G20, but now it's like Joe Biden's brain is such mashed potatoes and mush. He can't really like think of the guy's name even this year. So if you're watching right now, go ahead and smash that like button. We're going to come back with those stories. Plus, Joe Biden is such an incoherent mess. They actually cut his mic off during his presser when he was mid-sentence. So they treat Joe Biden like a child, okay? And that's very clear. Joe Biden, he's an elderly fellow who has got access to our nuclear codes. And somehow he was so discombobulated during this press conference, his staff actually had to cut off his mic mid-sentence. So I've got the moment here for you where he had to have his mic cut off. This is also at the G20 summit. So we'll talk about that. I'm telling you, I mean, who is he? He's just such an incoherent mess. What else are we talking about today? I did tell you about those New Jersey prisons where they are having transgender people in with the women. So these transgender women, men who identify as women, are going into these women's prisons and sexually assaulting them in massive numbers. Like many people, there have been a number of scandals coming out of this same prison that I'm going to tell you about. Now, this woman has filed a lawsuit against the Department of Corrections. So we're going to get into that. If you're watching, go ahead and smash that like button and share this out with your normie friends. Joe Biden's staff actually cut his mic off. So he was incoherently rambling and he was just a mess. And his staff had to cut his mic off while he was in this presser at the G20 summit. And they cut him off like mid sentence. So they do have to treat Joe Biden like he's a child. And this was not a good look for them on Sunday. So Joe Biden, he's an elderly fellow, in case you weren't aware, and he also has access to our nuclear codes. And he was so discombobulated during a press conference that his staff actually had to cut off his mic. Now, there was another moment where he forgot the name of the Saudi prince, the crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. And look, I'm very upset from his exchange with this prince last year. So last year, he gave him a big old fist bump. And what really peeved me off about that was this guy, the Saudi prince, he is responsible for the death of Jamal Khashoggi. Jamal Khashoggi is an American journalist. He was murdered, and he's an American journalist for the Washington Post, was an American journalist for the Washington Post. And, Joe Biden got out there on the campaign trail and he says, we're going to make them pay the price, and we're going to make them, in fact, a pariah that they are. That's what he said about Saudi and about the Saudi regime. And here we are. Fast forward to when he's president, he's fist bumping him at the last year's G20 summit. This year, he can't even remember the guy's name. Okay, so he's speaking, and he couldn't even remember his name. So before we get into the G20 summit, what we can hear from Joe Biden, whatever he can make out, I wanted to play this for you. This is actually quite funny. So this is the Presidential Olympics, and it's the 2023 Presidential Olympics. We've got Joe Biden in one corner, Donald Trump in the other. This is a really funny video, and you can watch it via the stream, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble if you want to see it. But the narration is so good. It's good for audio, too. You got to listen to this. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for day one of the Presidential Olympics. And it's a lovely day here in Delaware. And the day one event, as always, is the Air Force One Stairway event. Straightforward, but has seen its share of adventures over the years. And we're just in time to catch the first attempt of Donald J. Trump representing the United States of America. And I'm told he's been taking this event very seriously. He's had a Stairmaster installed at Mar-a-Lago, and he's been on that several hours a day, just perfecting his technique. Just going over some last-minute pointers here with his personal trainer and coach. And it's a confident salute and steady approach. Just using the standard grip and pull technique that was popularized by Woodrow Wilson in the early 1700s. And will he attempt the turn and wave? He does. He doesn't disappoint, and it's a smooth delivery.
Okay.
And next up, Joseph Robinette Biden, of course, representing the United States of Ukraine. Also receiving some last-minute pointers from his coach. And it's a confident salute with a light jog attempt, still with a grip and pull, but it seems to be doing the trick. Oh, and I was about to say it seems to be doing the trick. It's gone. He's gone twice, and he's gone a third time. That we've never seen that before. Just reaching out to the other handrail and realizing his arms aren't long enough. Doing a little jog move at the end there. Will he go for the turn and wave? No, he's saluting. That's a solid salute to finish. I'm losing his balance there a little bit, just as he disappears into the plane. We're going to take a look at that from another angle. I've just been told apparently the contestants were warned by the Olympic Commission that attempting such a strenuous activity wearing masks might result in some lightheadedness. Maybe that's what happened here. Did he trip? We're not sure. He went 3 times. It's just embarrassing. It's so much work. I feel so sorry for Joe. He put so much effort into this. He's been carrying a retractable staircase with him everywhere he goes and doing a lot of practice.
Okay, so that's a much longer video. We're going to share that onto our social media if you want to watch the rest of it. I'm crying in studio because it was so funny. They're narrating the Presidential Olympics 2023, Joe Biden falling up Air Force One. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. So this brings me to today's story, where his mic gets cut off at the end. So he starts being so incoherent to where we don't know what he's saying at all. Like, I don't know what he's trying to get out. But it was so bad to the point where his staff actually had to cut off his mic. So here we go. Let's take a listen to it. You guys can watch him like get his mic cut off, and he's very confused when his mic is cut off here. Let's take a listen. Here we go.
It is easy, isn't it? This around the world in 5 days is interesting. Well, there's that, one of my staff members said, remember the famous song, Good Morning Vietnam? Well, good evening, Vietnam. And good morning back in America.
What? I don't know. I have no idea what's going on there. He's at the G20 summit, and one of the moments that really peeved me off about the G20 summit this go around, I mean, his staff cut off his mic, muted him, but also he's exchanging pleasantries with bin Salman again. So bin Salman, Mohammed bin Salman, he's the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, and he is responsible for the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. And when Joe Biden was running, he said that he was going to make Saudi Arabia the pariah that they are in regards to this issue, where, I don't know, an American journalist was killed and his body was dismembered and subsequently just disappeared. Oh, and this year, guy couldn't even remember his name. So Joe Biden couldn't even remember the name of the crown prince. But then later they exchanged pleasantries and smiles and handshakes and everything like that. So obviously the Saudi prince wasn't too offended by Joe Biden forgetting his name. Do want to shift gears. Let's talk about this story. I've got this climate change weenie in Boston. So she declares this climate emergency for September 8th or 7th through the 8th. And her name is Michelle Wu. She's the Boston mayor. And she blamed climate change for what she described as extreme heat. And let me just check my notes here. Hold on. Yep. Yeah, 87 degrees. So 87 degrees was extreme heat. And she said that they had to declare an emergency for this whopping 87 degrees. Don't know about y'all, but I think that 87 degrees is pretty standard for Boston in late summer. So this is after we've had 3,000 air conditioning units installed in the schools. Now, for some odd reason, these AC units cannot handle the or they have some electrical limitations. And the reason why they're having electrical limitations is, well, dun, 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 climate change policy, because she's mandating this climate profit is mandating that these new municipal buildings and these major renovations operate without fossil fuels. And these air conditioning units, of course, they're not going to run when you use things like wind and solar because it doesn't work. Wind and solar don't work. So I'm going to be talking about this here in a little bit more in just a bit. You're listening to The Morning Buzz. Be sure to like, love, share the video, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm live in studio every morning. You can catch me there. You can also catch me on the Cities 92.9 app. There's all kinds of ways to listen. We'll be back. They sent Kamala Harris to the World Trade Center memorial instead of Joe Biden. They are doing it in plain sight. And I want to make this clear. James Wood, he was actually he warned the FBI about 9/11 a month before the attacks, and they didn't listen. So I'm going to be playing that audio here in just a little bit. And look, folks, remember everyone, 9/11 means we have to have boots on the ground in every country in the Middle East forever. Freedom, democracy, freedom and democracy requires that we have boots on the ground in every country in the Middle East forever. And I just want to play this audio here for you. I've got it. James Woods apparently reminding or making it known, hey, I'm warning you about 9/11 before the attacks even happened. So this is kind of incredible. I'm going to be playing that here for you. Let me pull it up here. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
Actor James Woods was on a flight from Boston to Los Angeles when he observed some Middle Eastern passengers acting strangely. He told authorities what he saw, and the FBI has apparently corroborated that it may have been a dry run for the 9/11 hijackers.
I got a phone call that actually wakes me up, and he said, we want to talk to you about the flight that you took in August. I said, oh, did the manifest match of any of the flights yesterday and my flight? He said, well, we can't tell you that. I said, well, look, I'll get ready and I'll come down to the federal building. He said, we're outside your house. We'll just wait. Wow, 7:15. So it's 4:30 in the morning. I said, and this is the only funny part of any of this. I said, how did you know where I live? And there was a pause. He said, we're the FBI. We're the FBI. Thank you. So they came in and I said, look, I'm dying to know, were these the guys? And he said, well, we've had 36,000 tips in one day. And there's two of us, and we're going to be at your house all this morning, so you can do the math, but we can't tell you, So since then, I have identified for sure two of them as two of the terrorists who actually were not on Flight 11, but one was on Flight 175 and one was on Flight 77. And I've been told unofficially, not by the FBI, but by someone else in actually a higher level of government, believe it or not, just through a coincidence, through a mutual friend, that all four of them were terrorists involved.
That is unbelievable. So there was basically a rehearsal of what these guys would do.
Right, but what's significant about this is that it was a rehearsal with four men. And I can't say it as a fact that they were the four, but I've been led to believe, without going into details of how, that they were on different flights. So the notion that they were separate cells, and this is tricky territory, but I think in the Moussaoui trial, there's going to be some contention that, he was a soldier and didn't know what was going to happen until he stepped on the plane and then decided in a fit of good conscience not to be a terrorist anymore. In fact, the fact that these two people were identified by myself and other people and were on the Boston-LA flight and ended up dying on two other flights of the four flights on September 11th, so that they were
an amazing story.
There was
and this is the first time I've ever heard this. This is the first time you tell them the story.
Yes.
Wow. There you have it. James Woods, apparently he warned the FBI about 9/11 a month before the actual attacks, and I don't think they listened. 309-451-9299. Before we, that's going to be the end of the show here, folks. There was so much I wanted to get to, but the show just goes by so fast. We'll get to a lot of things tomorrow morning, Tuesday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Remembering the fallen today, as it marks 22 years since the deadliest terror attack on U.S. soil. 3,000 lives claimed by these hijacked plane attacks. And Joe Biden, he's not going to Virginia. He's not going to New York. He's not going to Pennsylvania. Instead, he'll be in Alaska. He sent his VP to the World Trade Center. So I'll be back at it tomorrow morning. Glenn Beck is up after me. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Love you.